We'll just get started. So I will call the meeting to order. Councilmember Bergan, it's just you and I for right now. Are you good with the minutes from last month?
I am, thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. So then we will move on to our first topic, which is the ADUs. I know we're all excited to hear about that. So I will let you take it away.
All right. Good evening or good afternoon. Jeremiah Fettig, planner, the Planning and Business Development Department. 1 second while I get the slideshow prepared here. All right. Should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, so today's topic is accessory dwelling units, commonly referred to as ADUs. So just going to go over some recap of efforts that were undertaken in 2025 and then leave it open for questions and discussion towards the end of the presentation to potentially reevaluate ADUs this year in 2026. So I'll begin with an overview of ADUs, what they are, the common types of ADUs, some benefits that we see of ADUs, currently permitted types within Aurora and where they are permitted. And then we'll go into the background of the 2025 project effort to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO, regarding ADUs. So the UDO provides two different definitions. A lot of the language is similar, but overall, ADUs are subordinate and secondary to the primary dwelling or the home, and they provide basic requirements for independent living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. So within the UDO, there's, as I said, those two different definitions. And the latter is detached. So that is currently what is proposed within the city of Aurora in certain geographic areas and certain circumstances. So in a few slides, I will mention more regarding those. Then generally speaking, there's three common types of ADUs. Those are detached, attached, and internal. So detached, those are units that are detached from the primary structure, primary dwelling, typically located in the rear yard. They can be on top of a garage. They can be a garage conversion, new construction. So just those types of construction methods. The second is internal that we'll go over. These are within the primary dwelling or the home. Commonly basement conversions, upper story conversions. They can be on the main floor of the primary structure as well. And then the final type is attached. So these are attached to typically the side or the rear yard. They can be atop of a garage, things of that nature. Some benefits of ADUs. So ADUs are supported by the comprehensive plan, the Aurora Places comprehensive plan. So one of the 7 principles from the comprehensive plan is housing for all. Benefits of ADUs include increasing housing options for smaller households, lower income households, older populations wishing to age in their neighborhoods. Additionally, they offer an alternative to low density dispersed development. They can reduce water, greenhouse gas emissions, and infrastructure costs. ADUs also encourage multi-generational housing and can assist offsetting housing costs by providing a supplementary income. So currently, the UDO permits detached-only ADUs within the geographic area of original Aurora. They are only allowed on lots served by an Alli. They require a conditional use permit with a public hearing, so they're approved, by Planning Commission. And there are use-specific standards that apply. So since 2018, when the UDO was amended to permit detached ADUs in original Aurora, there have been 9 approved for construction, and there's currently 1 under construction. In addition to what's permitted in original Aurora, the Painted Prairie Master Plan has permitted ADUs since 2023. They must be permitted and constructed at time of the initial dwelling construction. Up to this point, none have been approved or constructed. So this just gives some geographic context. So the map on the left is the limits of the original Aurora neighborhood. So basically bound by Peoria Street to the east, 6th Avenue to the south, Yosemite to the west, and then 26th to the north. So then on the map on the right is an overall map of the city of Aurora. So you can see it's just really the northwest quadrant where ADUs are currently permitted. So planning staff has been mapping and documenting ADU inquiries since 2023 based on council ward. So these inquiries include calls, walk-ins, and emails from residents and property owners that are seeking to construct an ADU or asking if they can, things of that nature. So as of February 12th of this year, there's been 206 requests documented, 118 in Ward 1, 13 in Ward 2, 33 in Ward 3, 23 in Ward 4, 24 in Ward 5, and then 6 in Ward 6. So the map on the right is just the council ward map, just to give some geographic context to where we're seeing, the volume or the larger volume of inquiries. I'll just preface it by saying, these are only the inquiries that have been provided to the planner that has been documenting and mapping these. It's likely that there's quite a few that we have missed. So recap on the efforts from 2025. So planning staff drafted and brought forward a text amendment to the UDO regarding ADUs. The text amendment ordinance was drafted to be in conformance with House Bill 24-1152, which did become state law on June 30th of 2025. So it's now included in Title 29 of Colorado Revised Statutes. So the main proposed text amendment ordinance changes to the UDO included allowing ADUs to be permitted on all single-family detached lots within the city, expanded the permitted ADU types to include internal and attached, to expand further the only permitting the detached types, and revising the existing conditional use permit approval to an administrative approval process. During that initiative and effort, staff did meet and engage with the developer and builder community. Additionally, a project webpage was created to engage on Engage Aurora. That included project information, key dates. The draft text amendment ordinance was provided on there, and it was kind of a repository for residents to add comments and questions of staff, and then we would address those questions or comments that were received. So that proposed text amendment ordinance did not pass at the June 9th City Council meeting. So I will now turn it over to Janine Rustad, Director of Planning and Business Development, to present the next two slides.
Thank you, Jeremiah. So one of the criticisms of House Bill 24-1152 was it purported to override HOAs. I like to talk about the conditions, covenants, or the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or CC&Rs, as a contract between that HOA and the homeowners. So you know what you're buying into, what's going to be allowed, what's not allowed, setting the expectations. The UDO typically does not interfere with CC&Rs. Lena has been great as we've been moving through this, of referring when we get inquiries. Well, I want to do an ADU, but my HOA doesn't allow it. How does a state statute impact? She was great at referring people to their HOA attorney, that we don't get involved. And another thing to note is a UDO, what CC&Rs can be more restrictive than the UDO, but not less restrictive. And we try not in the UDO to carve out exceptions or to override what CC&Rs may say. So next slide, please. So with that little bit of background, both from Jeremiah, we have some questions for you that, Chair, with your consideration, we'd like to go through one by one. The first is, does the committee wish that staff pursue an amendment to the UDO to allow ADUs citywide?
It looks like it's still just me and Councilmember Bergan on. So Councilmember Bergan, I'll let you go first.
Okay, thank you. So my concern with the ADUs, especially to allow them citywide, again, is you did mention the HOAs. I guess I'm not 100% clear if we would not interfere with an HOA's ability to preclude them. And then my other question would be, what about metro districts?
As to your first question, that is something we are asking your guidance on. Usually the UDO would not interfere, and from a staff perspective, we would prefer not to interfere with what HOAs or metro districts restrict, that we wouldn't call out anything special, that
Okay,
we
'cause
just govern what we permit. The homeowner would then have to comply with whatever additional restrictions, whether they were design, allowing or not allowing. So
okay.
that,
Yeah, and I mean, I see it's a fourth question, but I guess for me, it's hard to answer number one without really understanding the fourth question, because if we say go to your HOA, go to your metro district, by doing an amendment, we are basically still not agreeing to the state overall policy?
we would not be in compliance with the state overall policy.
Okay, so we would just do our own amendment allowing certain.
Yes.
Okay, so if that's the situation where we're not agreeing to the state, because I think theirs was just too broad, I would be okay with an amendment as long as we don't interfere with metro districts or HOAs.
Great, thank you. I believe Mayor Pro Tem Coombs, did you have any comment on this? Yeah, I just saw you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess my question on that is how much of the city ends up being excluded if we say HOAs and metro districts are just in charge of whether or not UDOs are built?
Well, we would be permitting them. We would have to go through each HOA, their CCNRs, to see what they allow or don't allow. Of course, much of Ward 2 is HOA driven. A lot of wards, I think 3, 4, and
6.
5. Well, 6, yes, definitely HOA driven. But that's not to say that those HOAs restrict them. So it is unclear. Wards 1, 3, 4, and 5. Well, 1, 3, 4, and 5, I believe are there's many areas without HOAs. Lena.
Hi, Chair Wiles, through you, if you don't mind, just wanted to provide a little
Absolutely.
clarification to the question. So generally, we do not regulate HOAs and their CCNRs. Also, I would make note that a metro district, that's an ADU would not generally be something that a metro district would be involved in or be regulating. Metro districts are created for specific purposes, generally for the bonding and tax purposes of building infrastructure. So this is really more an HOA conversation, or would be an HOA situation. The other thing just to note is that if you all remember or have read the bill that was passed in 2024, that bill specifically called out that HOAs could not enforce rules that were that would prohibit ADUs. And I would just say the city has not in the past, and generally I would not advise us to get involved between an individual homeowner and their HOA and whether or not their HOA should or should not be enforcing certain covenants. We generally advise that we stay out of those conversations. And so whether or not somebody's HOA is enforcing or not enforcing this law is not something I would suggest we get involved in. I would say if we're going to proceed with this type of amendment to our UDO, we go forward with making it allowed in the areas we wish to do so, and leave it kind of there. That would be sort of my 2 cents.
I'll go to other questions first, but can I ask one just procedural question? So potentially if we were to say yes, citywide, we're allowing ADUs, we could potentially issue the permit approval, whatever, but then it's the responsibility of the owner to get with their HOA and deal with that HOA process. Is that sort of how we would
That's
approach
correct.
it? Okay.
Yeah, and that's how we handle kind of everything where an HOA might be involved. Is HOAs can have rules about, fencing and things like that that might, you know, not, I wouldn't
Be
say
more, be
conflict,
more
but they might be more
restrictive.
restrictive than ours. And so an applicant for a fence permit, say, would get a fence permit from the city, and then it's their responsibility to make sure that then they get those approvals with their HOA. And if they have conflicts with their HOA, that is generally between them and the HOA, and we do not get involved in that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Looks like Mayor Pro Tem, you were first, and then we'll go to Bergan. You had yours up second.
Yeah, so mine is just a follow-up here, which is, so then if we are silent on restrictions imposed by HOAs, that doesn't really make us non-compliant with the House bill. The House bill is handling that, right? The state law is what's governing that HOA situation, or does the state law say the city has to say what HOAs can and can't do?
It does not say that, Mayor Pro Tem. It does not speak to whether or not, it does not require us to say anything about the HOAs.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bergan.
Okay, so I understand that you're saying we don't regulate HOAs. However, it's going to happen if we just say blanket, everybody can do an ADU across the whole entire city. You're going to have residents that are going to then go to their HOA. Their HOA is going to say, either they might say no, or even if they say yes, they might say, well, you must meet architectural standards of our regular, covenants. And then when the resident then complains, they're going to complain to us. They're going to go to the HOA. They're going to try to appeal it. If it gets denied, they are going to end up coming back to the city. And then we're going to say, sorry, you have to deal with your HOA. I guess that's what I'm hearing.
And we already have that, whether it's design standards, Lena's fence example, if someone's doing an addition on their house, that is the case in many situations already.
Okay, but then the state bill basically says HOAs can't deny them, correct?
Lena,
Yes, it says they can't restrict the creation of an ADU in any way
Okay.
that's prohibited by the bill.
So would we get challenged, even though if we do an amendment that says we'll allow them, but we're not going to interfere with HOAs, then do we get challenged by the state, even though we're not agreeing to the state bill?
I believe we've already, Lena, received notices on this bill and others that were non-compliant.
That is correct.
So here's the thing. People that save their monies to buy a home, life savings, they bought a home based on where they wanted to live. And especially if they are in a metro district or an HOA, they chose, I want to live in this community because it looks this way. It has certain standards, can't have RVs parked, whatever, can't paint my house pink. They bought with that intention of that's what they are going to have forever. And when you start introducing anybody can have an ADU, which causes other issues, parking and so forth, and changes the characteristic of the neighborhood that they signed up to live in, you have basically taken away, I feel, their property rights. You've possibly devalued their properties, and back to what you said earlier, that HOAs have CCRs and they are contractual. So I do believe they're contractual, and that's why I just don't believe in allowing them across the board. So I guess I'm okay as long as we don't interfere with the HOA and their rules. And by agreeing to have them citywide, we're not saying that we agree with the state.
Correct.
And
we
by the
would
way,
like
metro
to,
districts, there's many metro districts that have merged their HOA with their metro district. So they still have the covenants, the CCRs, but they're embedded in the metro district.
and staff recommendation is that the UDO remain silent as it does on design standards. Again, CCNRs can be more restrictive, and the
Okay.
city should not step into that because that is contractual between the homeowner and HOA or metro district. And I think it's also important, that second question, because right now we only allow ADUs with a conditional use. And one of the advantages of having the public hearing, that opportunity to be heard, is it does change character. Could be slightly if it's internal, but it gives people the opportunity to be heard. So the second question is assuming yes, and
Yeah.
it sounds like with some trepidation from Councilmember Bergan, Councilmember Wiles, we need to hear from you, and hopefully Councilmember Jackson will come on. Should these be a matter of right? Should it be conditional use?
Yeah, I'll just right away, since I'm still speaking, I'll say I would want a conditional use. And that does give the opportunity for, for feedback, for input, especially if it negatively affects somebody and they want to speak on it. I think it just, to do it administratively, you have basically shut all public, or input completely down.
Well, and I would say, kind of playing devil's advocate to what we just talked about. We talked about people owning their home and, putting a lot of, time and money into saving to purchase a home, and then potentially, their neighbor could say, no, I don't want you to build a home for your, elderly parent who needs to come live with you, and no, you can't build something over your garage. So I'm interested to hear what others have to say, but I guess I'm a little bit torn. I think we should allow them citywide. I'm torn on the permitting process just because I do see both sides when it comes to that of,
Can I clarify then on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I might be different on administrative if it's internal, like a basement type of thing, versus an exterior, detached ADU. Because I think that is very different in terms of characteristics of a neighborhood that people bought to live in a certain, character, and they're paying. By the way, it's not like in the older part of the city where you're not paying HOA dues or Metro District taxes. So I think that should be conditional. Internal, I guess I wouldn't have a problem with that being administrative.
Mayor Pro Tem Coombs, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so to your point, Councilmember Wiles, people also have property rights to their home when they want to do something, not just when they want something to not be done. And so the conditional use can often get used to just shut somebody down, even if they're being fairly reasonable, just because someone else doesn't want them to do what they want to do with their property. So I wonder if we could look at other ways to address potential concerns with respect to the attached, or internal. So Councilmember Bergan, I don't know if the same is like for attached, right? If someone's building an addition essentially to their house, but it's simply has a separate entrance and a kitchen in it, that technically would make it an ADU. And I'm not sure that would negatively affect the character of a neighborhood. But for external ADUs, maybe there's also some considerations around you know, setbacks from your neighbor's property or things of that nature that could balance both people's property rights rather than setting someone up to lose their property rights by creating the conditional use hearing situation.
So
Councilmember Bergan, go ahead.
thank you. Okay, so I mean, attached is a little, I would assume you're going to try to match your house if you're doing an attached ADU. On the external detached, I think it should be conditional because you're looking at, is it alley loaded? You know, where's the entrance to your ADU? Life safety matters, parking, all those things. And I think, I mean, just because it's conditional does not mean it's not going to get approved. Janine, can you speak on conditional?
Yes, we have been working very closely with the Planning and Zoning Commission to make sure that their decisions are on the criteria. So if a neighbor testified that I don't like this, that is taken, of course, listened to and taken into consideration. But the request is that the decision, when they make their motion, second, that they discuss the criteria. And having very clear criteria will be important. So if it's detached, that if there's a 10-foot setback, staff will walk through how criteria are met before it even gets to that. So it's not arbitrary.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Coombs, do you have your hand up? Okay.
I actually have to step
Oh.
away, but thanks, y'all.
You're good. Is there, just question, is there like a national standard or best practice in terms of a setback from your neighbor that potentially we could take into account as we're looking through the requirements?
Jeremiah, I don't know with your research you've done.
Yeah, so we drafted the previous code just to follow what state law says, and also looking at the current, UDO and what it says about detached accessory structures, and those setbacks are 5 feet. But we are more than happy to look into that, see if there's, other places, other states, other municipalities, see what they've done.
And is the state law 5 feet? Is that what you're saying?
It's a maximum of 5 feet. The minimum, I guess, defaults to whatever you have existing on the books for accessory structures. So we were technically in compliance with that 5 feet, but yes.
And one thing we can do with some of this discussion is come back in a month or two, maybe some time for research, and have a more refined proposal before we actually dive into drafting anything.
I think that would make sense, maybe just getting some ideas as far as, also looking at potentially, and Councilmember Bergan, I'll let you chime in just as soon as I get my thought out, but potentially looking at different processes like for the detached versus one that's internal or, part of the house, right? And then we could look at that way. Potentially, if we went forward with, the full council wanted to do the, conditional use and going through that whole process, maybe that's just for the detached and the attached doesn't need to go through that. Like, could we separate it potentially in terms of that way, like set different processes and standards based on if it's attached or detached?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's up to, council, this committee to kind of direct staff, and we'll bring back variants that, you see fit.
Perfect. Councilmember Bergan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And just to Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Coombs' comment about property rights, there is a big difference between changing property rights and preserving property rights. So people like me that own my home in a metro district with covenants, I would like to preserve my property rights. I have invested a life savings in my house. So there's a big difference there. And the reason that we have zoning and those type of restrictions is why, I mean, that's why we have property rights, and it's based on those other things that we that we have as far as zoning. Like if we don't just allow commercial buildings in the middle of a neighborhood, that would also affect property rights. So I just want to make that clear that preservation of property rights is also should be very, very much considered. I can tell you my residents in Ward 6 will lose their minds on ADUs being allowed if they are not done correctly in terms of architectural characteristics and so forth. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of lawsuits. So I'm good with amending. I would like us to spend more time on maybe staff, as mentioned, to look at what could be done administratively versus conditional, but I think we need to be really careful so that we don't end up getting sued.
Okay, so staff, can maybe you come back in an additional meeting and just give us some of the information as far as like processes? Could we have two separate processes? What will we look out for the UDOs as far as, you know, structure and what it could look like? Just making sure that we keep it consistent with the neighborhood or whatever that looks like as well. And then we can talk about it and move forward after that. I definitely think it's important to allow them, but I agree with Councilmember Bergan. It does need to be done correctly so that, you know, we're following state law, but we're also not putting ourselves in the crosshairs of a ton of litigation by angry homeowners.
Absolutely, we can come back. And if we have any questions, I would ask if it would be okay to come back in April so that we can put some thought behind this. And then I think the point from staff perspective is we want to do what's right for Aurora. And of course, Aurora throughout our wards is very different. So I think this is a very good approach to this.
Okay, perfect. I think April works. And then if you have any other questions for us, obviously just let us know. But I think April is fine, and then we can move forward after that.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
No, thank you so much for preparing it. I'm sure it's a lot to look into and try and figure out, so I appreciate it. So the next topic, it says housing UDO analysis update.
Yes, that would be me, Brandon Camerata. Let me pull up my presentation here. There we go. Can you see that? Oops.
I could for a second.
Okay, let me try again. Apologies.
You're good. Sometimes Teams can be a pain, I know.
I'll do it a different way. Let's see. All right, you can see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Brandon Camerata. I am the manager for the current planning division here at the city and also the project manager for the small lots project. Thank you again for kind of our monthly update. And it is a little bit of an update today, hopefully tracking to a more substantive discussion in March. Just to revisit, as we've mentioned before, you know, the goal of this project includes expanding opportunities for compact single-family housing throughout the city or in more places in the city, and have that discussion with the council. The expansion of compact housing, with that expansion, we would need to make sure our neighborhoods continue to be livable and adaptable places. As we advance these goals, we also look for opportunities to ensure predictability, add simplicity and flexibility to our code that manages these ideas. And the intent of this project could hopefully support the market in providing more price points for housing types while still developing enduring and desirable places for the city of Aurora. As I've mentioned before, we're in the back third or back quarter of this project, which started basically the beginning of last summer. And a key component to the project up to this point has been working on an iterative basis with our development committee, our roundtable group. And so we had the opportunity to have our fourth roundtable last month. So coming into our development roundtable, we're obviously building on our previous discussions. And we were fortunate to able to present to them some partial code concepts last January. And I'm really appreciative of the committee to allow us to do that and kind of get some incremental feedback and be able to hopefully get to a final product as efficiently as possible. So I'll touch on a few of the concepts that we broached in the last meeting. The first two items are areas of the existing code that we've heard are challenging. The two-turn rule is an approach to ensuring a level of street connectivity. And relating to green courts are a way to configure homes around a common green space and can yield smaller lot configurations. So those are things that I think are going well. We've been able to present some alternatives or additional flexibility to some of those items while still trying to address the importance of street connectivity and some of the fundamentals of green court design. So those things are tracking well. We also received feedback at the meeting on frontages, and that's a piece that we'll be working on, needing to clarify the expectations with that and things of that sort. So frontages are an important concept in our current code right now that we use, as well as any framework we have moving forward. And what that really relates to is as lots get smaller, and the small lot allowances are implemented, at what point do we have the need to look at alley loaded products or shared drives and things of that sort. So that's what we were talking about when we're talking about frontages. There's some other pieces to that as well. Another topic that will probably be discussed as we move down the road is the approach to distinctions between zoning districts. Or approaches where a lot of things are allowed in one zone district. And so there's pros and cons to both of those approaches in terms of tools for the city to be considering, as well as challenges and opportunities for the development community. So I thought we got good feedback on that and are putting some more brain power into that topic and continue to refine that. Similarly, or not similarly necessarily, but proximity to commercial areas is something that's certainly on the table and a consideration as we look at larger areas of potentially larger density, and how do we want to look at proximity to commercial areas or frequency of commercial areas. So that's always a challenge. I think we all understand the retail markets evolving rapidly and always changing and a moving target, and there's other challenges involved with getting new commercial areas integrated into new neighborhoods. So that'll be something that's available for us to be considering as we move forward. What else? Pros coordination, again, relating to proximity situations as we have nodes of higher density areas. Currently, our code does require, when we're doing small lot circumstances, that there's a proximity to park space or pocket parks and things of that sort. And I think we're still obviously tracking to maintaining those sort of relationships, but also going on is the pros manual update. And so there was desire and conversation about having those be as coordinated as possible so that they're all pulling things and communicating in the same direction for our community and development community. And then kind of looking at, I guess this is a good question, meaning, okay, if this is tracking in a good direction and we get these things adopted, how would I start to implement those? I being a developer who maybe is halfway built out in a community or just starting and kind of built under the old framework. And so we've been getting into some testing and running some scenarios of what that would kind of look like. So those are some of the things that we talked about at our last meeting. And those are things that warrant refining on our part as well. So we're doing that, working on those topics for refinement. As I mentioned, those were partial code component concepts. So also working to build out the full code concept. Between the two of those efforts, we'll likely be working to identify the need for policy directions as necessary. So we're kind of, as we put all those together, then we'll have to come back to you all. We're hoping to get to that point in March where we're asking for some policy direction on certain issues. At March, I think we're hoping to have what we're calling at this point a code summary, which would be kind of, here's how our current code approaches an issue. Here's where we think we're headed on that issue, and here's the reasons whys and any challenges or constraints with those ideas. Also, along those lines, we're developing illustratives and diagrams to help us communicate on those issues. As I mentioned, we're also testing our framework. So as we developed pieces of a more complete code, running through proposals and working with our staff to make sure they can understand and implement the code, and also understand the implications of what we're thinking about at this point. So those are all important pieces. So that's where we're working towards, is to be able to try to bring you all a meaningful discussion in March and try to have some policy direction at that point. I'm here to answer any questions, and also I have another slide. If we did have some follow-up, there was a question on tiny homes at the last meeting, and so I can address that too. But I guess there are any questions about this presentation here?
Councilmember Bergan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just no, I appreciate all the work, Brandon, that you and your team have been doing this past year. You mentioned that you'll bring forward some diagrams and illustrations. I think I heard that right. That is very helpful for me as a visual person, and I think also Councilmember will also appreciate that as well. Wiles will also appreciate that as well. Is there a way, I know it's sometimes even with the diagrams, it's still hard to kind of figure out the connection to, to the parks, to the streets and street networks and so forth, and how that all works, or parking configurations. And maybe with AI, maybe this is easier to be done, but like giving us maybe some examples that show, well, here's one with the green courts and here's one with another configuration, and then be able to like actually show some of your challenges that you were referring to. Is that possible?
Yeah, I thank you for the question. And yeah, I think that's what we're striving for. And, how close we'll be able to get to meeting all those needs. We're going to try to get as close as we can to show those sort of ideas, because we want to communicate as clearly as possible to have an effective discussion. So, and for certain.
Yeah, and I think sometimes even if we just have like a little picture of how the motor courts or the green courts look, we can't necessarily visualize all those other external impacts unless you literally see one built that you can go visit. So I think it's always difficult to create code on the unknown. And then you allow something to happen, and then you might end up getting the complaints later from residents that we didn't anticipate. So I think that's just important from both sides, from the development community, but then also from the city side, to make sure that we consider all those factors. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, no, I agree. I think this is really helpful. And I agree. I like paper and I like printing things out and looking at it. So, a fake neighborhood or a fake street, like what it might look like or what the options are, I think would be helpful. And then in turn, I think once those are created, they could potentially be helpful to our, development partners and out there, just so that they get a better idea of what could happen or what it should look like ideally. So I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're trying to get the most bang for our buck in terms of whatever we do. And so we would anticipate those being hopefully usable down the road with whatever we end up with to help communicate whenever we need to, whether it's for development community as part of manuals or to have additional discussions with council.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know this is a really hot topic that everybody is looking forward to once we can get it all figured out. So I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing on this.
Thank you. Would you like me to touch on the tiny homes? Okay.
Absolutely. Another hot topic. So we might as well hear what we have going on.
So I think last PED, I believe Council Member Hancock had kind of a general question on tiny homes. I hope I have that correct. So I'll say, to be clear, tiny homes would not be what we're talking about with small lots and things like that. But let's see. That said, tiny homes are enabled in our UDO. That was looked at in 2019 when we adopted the UDO. They are explicitly enabled in our manufactured home districts. Those districts are fairly limited in geography, and they exist primarily where we have existing manufactured home parks. To the degree that a tiny home is placed on a permanent foundation and hooked up in a permanent fashion and can meet the building codes and things of that sort that may relate to that, there's some other options probably outside of the mobile home districts and where we have, I think they're called cottage housing options. Those are different than green courts and things like that. Cottage housing and co-housing, where they are intended for smaller homes and kind of a common framework there. That said, we have not had really a single serious inquiry about tiny homes, and so we have not had the opportunity to really go down those paths and see where the challenges and obstacles are. So it's been pretty quiet on that front from our perspective. That's all I have. I'd be happy to, if there's any questions, let me know.
Councilmember Hancock, did you have any questions, or did that solve?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate you you bringing that up. And Brandon, thank you for all the work that you're doing here. I am still very interested in this option, particularly as it relates to first-time home buyers and seniors looking to downsize. And I visited several tiny home communities outside Colorado, particularly in outside of Austin and outside North Carolina. And they're complete communities, specially designed in and of themselves to be tiny house, not trailer parks, but tiny house communities with the amenities that you would find in a resort type community, if you're tracking with me. And I understand that nobody's really expressed that right now, but I think it would be beneficial for us to look at it as an option, so that when the opportunity presents itself, we are prepared to say, yeah, we're amenable to having a community like this available for those people in unique, geographic, economic groups that would look to have this as an option. So that's kind of where I'm at, but I appreciate us continuing to keep that on the burner. I think it's a viable option, particularly as our population ages and as the younger people are looking to get into the housing market.
I agree. I watch a lot of HGTV, Councilmember Hancock, so I see a lot of those out there. Maybe once we get the small lot topic completely nailed down, this is something we could look into a little bit more. I don't want to put too much on your guys' plate all at one time and overload you guys, but maybe once we have the small lot thing figured out, then we could start to look just what best practices look like, what other communities are doing in terms of, new opportunities, because, housing is an issue in our state, especially in our city, and this could be a potential solve for some of it that maybe once with additional, research and looking at who's already created some great best practices, we could kind of copy and see how it works for us.
And Council Chair Wiles, if I may, this is just a brief snapshot where we are today. What we can do is enlist the help of some of our long-range planners to start that best practice. If it moves forward, we will have to wait for availability of Brandon's team, but we can at least bring you some background.
Okay, that would be great. Councilmember Bergan?
Yes. First question is a tiny home with a foundation, would that be considered an ADU?
I think that's a possibility. Yeah. I think we would want to be thinking about that with the ADU discussion.
Yeah, because I was thinking a lot of the ADUs I see that are, especially like the alley loaded areas, they look like tiny homes to me. So I don't know. I was like, that seems to qualify there. About what Councilmember Hancock talked about as a community, I watch, and to Councilmember Wiles, I watch a lot of HGTV as well. A lot of times these tiny homes are more rural that I see. They're kind of in the rural areas. So I don't know if they buy their land and then build, or if it is a whole entire community. Again, is that a metro district? Like, who pays for the infrastructure of the sewer lines, the water lines, the electric that has to be put in? Because obviously that's really different than a tiny home that's like considered an ADU where there's already that infrastructure already exists. So maybe just thoughts for down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you. I think this is a topic, yes, that we should probably look into, and then we'll determine once we have a little bit more information, and maybe once the small lot thing is completed, then we can kind of look and see what other options exist and what framework we need to start building in case this was to come up. So thank you for that. Next is the business development retail update.
Hello, good afternoon. Let me get my.
And Councilmember Wiles, while Cindy is pulling up, I wanted to let you know that Councilmember Jackson has joined the meeting, and I believe it's online.
Awesome.
I'm here.
Welcome, Alli.
Can you all see that?
We are actually seeing your presentation mode, not the.
All right, let me stop share. Me and Brandon went to the same school. It is not popping up here.
It's the day of the team's challenges. You're good. I have a huge meeting tomorrow I have to lead, and I have to create breakout rooms, and I've never done that. I'm anticipating a huge mess up on my part. So we'll see.
Okay, are we seeing it now?
Looks good, yes.
Okay, perfect.
I can't see you, but I'm not gonna worry about that, for the time being. So just pipe up if you have any comments or questions, so. All right, well, thank you for the opportunity for, the presentation. This is just an update for information today. I'll be talking a little bit about the retail strategy. Just kind of go through some of the tools that the business development team is using and talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that we have or that we're working on. And then the in the market section is really just some of the stuff that we've been up to for the past couple of months, and what we have coming up. And I'll preface that by saying this is my 7th week in the role. So, okay, so the retail strategy has been a project that's been ongoing for some time. Thanks to council member Bergan's sponsorship and vision, realizing that there needs to be some focus on retail. Retail is obviously important to the city because it's a big chunk of our general fund revenue. Retail's adapting, so we need to adapt too, and that requires collaboration and potentially thinking a little bit differently. The team is on the call. We have a team of 4, and there's Bob, Tom, and Brenda. So they can all wave. So if there are any questions about the process that go into any level of detail that I'm not privy to, since I'm relatively new, I will call on them. But the retail strategy was really a data-driven approach. So the team did a lot of digging. They did actual visual and in-person assessment of just about every retail center here in the city. They talked to just about every retail business that exists, trying to get a broad range of feedback and stakeholder input from the business side initially. So the strategy is really going to help us move forward in an intentional way. It can help inform future policy decisions potentially, which might be planning initiatives in the future. We're looking at incentives and other best practices. So we're also really trying to build on those business and commercial real estate partnerships. So as part of the council adoption of kind of the framework for the strategy, they also authorized staff to go and start engaging with the development community. So that we had our first meeting just a couple of weeks ago. To kind of give you a sense of the retail strategy goals, there's 4 primary goals and pillars. We discussed these with the first steering committee group, and that group was made up of retail brokers, developers, and center managers, all active within the city at this time. I think the key concept is our role as city staff is to help create the conditions where the private sector, developers, investors, tenants, and so on want to invest their money, and where people want to come and shop. So, that's really the gist of this whole strategy. So I'll talk first about the center priority task. That was part of the retail strategy. I just wanted to give you a quick update that staff is actively engaged with this process, looking at all of the different centers, evaluating, a variety of criteria. And the goal is to identify 1 or 2 in each ward that we can really focus on trying to encourage investment, or other ways that, we can help them with partnerships, potentially incentives, depending on what is approved ultimately. So, the criteria is, what centers have high vacancy? Are there weird access issues that are creating challenges for those businesses. So we expect that should be completed within the next month or two. It's going really well. I want to thank Tom and Bob for, you know, a lot of thought and detail that has gone into that work. And then the steering committee update. The goal of our first steering committee was to really just review the strategy goals, and we want to talk about incentives and really be quiet and get the feedback from the development community on what's going well, what's not going well, and where there might be opportunities for improvement or partnership. So some themes emerged from the steering committee, and these are just some of the raw feedback from the questions that we posed. So we've met internally and really been digesting all of this information and other information. And there's some kind of key themes that have come out of that. The group thought that there was interest from the committee on doing a citywide retail market study. And what that means is just looking at all of the retail we have with all of the daytime jobs and the housing that we have. So what is the appropriate amount of retail? And it would be looked at by different areas. We don't have that information currently. Development review and permitting got lots of kudos. So I've worked in other organizations, and I cannot say that that is always the case. That is something to be very, very proud of from the city of Aurora. You know, clearly there's always room for improvement, and there was some really thoughtful comments. So that might be an area where we dive a little bit deeper. Urban renewal came up, and we thought it might be an opportunity to get before this group and talk a little bit about urban renewal and what it is and maybe what it is not, and some of the timelines and requirements, just so that we're all on the same page. There were planning and zoning policy comments that came up. So we might take this opportunity just to explore from their perspective what planning-based mechanisms might be implemented to encourage redevelopment or support targeted incentives. So those are kind of the main things there. There was quite a bit of discussion on incentives. So as part of the retail strategy, some concepts were presented. The feedback was that incentives are a value tool. So we really need to be thinking thoughtfully about how we roll those out. I think the primary feedback that we heard was that any policy should be flexible, establish clear eligibility criteria that addresses new development versus redevelopment, and to attract catalytic tenants. So those are kind of three different things. But I think we can write the policy in a way that addresses all of those with, tier level criteria, if you will. So we'll have a little bit more discussion at our next roundtable on what that might look like. So after we have 2 more meetings. So after those 2 meetings, our plan is to roll all of this up into some tangible concepts for an implementation plan, and to present a proposed incentive policy. So we would bring that back to this body, and then defer feedback, and then take that to city council. We have a contractor downstairs. I hope you cannot hear that. So a little bit more about the center assessment. I talked a little bit about the criteria, and when the team went out and was evaluating all of the centers in Aurora, they divided them into center types like primary, secondary, kind of the main street. Again, the health review criteria is shown here. And then, we're looking to evaluate for potential urban renewal or other incentives. I will be frank that it doesn't appear that urban renewal, at least at first blush, is right for any of the centers. There's a lot that goes into that, and I'm not going to speak to that. That's not my area. But more to come on that. So we can't do this without great data. And I'm going to say this again, that we are blessed here in Aurora because we have some data masters on staff. I mean, Tom is like a wizard. So any information that comes from this division is data driven. So some of the tools are shown here. Placer AI is a fantastic tool. It can give us, trade area information, like where are people coming from? Where are they shopping? If they live here, are they going somewhere else? There's a boatload of information. We could do a whole presentation on how that tool is helpful. CoStar is a commercial real estate database. It's useful. It's only as good as the input. So it does require the brokers to input information, but it's a good litmus test for us. We do rely on our GIS team here. There's a lot of interdepartmental partnerships. Public Works can provide traffic counts. PD provides us with crime stats. Long range planning provides us with wonderful projections and demographics. And all of this is important information for us to share with prospective tenants or developers. We also rely on our partners. I have a whole list of partners that we're reaching out to. Visit Aurora. Tourism is a big deal. Like, are there things to do when people, when their families come and visit? Aurora Economic Development Council, what primary jobs are they attracting? What are the sectors that are growing? We work with Colorado labor and employment data. So there's a lot more than is shown on this slide. I just wanted to give you a flavor of, how we're pulling data and putting it all together. Water. So one of our key roles is getting out and about. And, we're talking with industry experts. We're talking with businesses. Robin and I just visited a business today, and it's great to really get out there and meet one-on-one. So this is really a list of kind of the industry conferences that we've been to in the last 6 weeks. So Interface Denver Retail Conference, Visit Aurora's annual update. The Colorado Real Estate Journal gives an annual update, and great story from that. I always say our best advertising comes from the industry or the business itself. And the team was there, and one of the moderators on one of the key panels called out Aurora as, really working to engage with the industry on process improvement and really having that interactive listening session. So fantastic. We are slated to go to the International Council of Shopping Centers conference. This is the big daddy of all retail conferences. So it happens every May, and it is where the national retailers live. So we're being very strategic this year. We're planning ahead on who we want to meet with. So we've already begun that outreach. And obviously we'll come back to this body and give an update on the outcomes for that. So that is it for my update. I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see all of you and answer any questions that you might have.
Councilmember Bergan.
Just first, thank you for all the work by everyone in staff. It took a lot over years actually to compile so much data and so forth, and then the recent outreach with the brokers and and shopping center managers and so forth. But I had asked a while, I think it was last year, about, and in fact, I contacted, I always forget the name of the organization that is over restaurants.
Colorado Restaurant Association.
Yeah, so I had a meeting with, she's like the marketing manager. I don't remember her name because it was like a year ago, but I had a meeting with her on how we could work in collaboration with their organization. And I had some ideas at the time. You know, they have, she brought up some of their events that we could participate in. And then also I think she was going to get us some listings. And I don't know what happened to that. Janine or Bob, somebody. And the reason I'm asking is because it's such a struggle, not in Ward 4, because they have all the restaurants. But in other wards, it's really a struggle to get restaurants in our city.
So Cindy, if you want to call him Bob, I know we did reach out with them. Restaurants are definitely a focus in the strategy.
Yep, we've signed up for the Restaurant Association. We're going to go to the events that they're having in the next few months. And so I don't know about the event we would be presenting at or having a booth, but they do have a lot of events. And so we're all signed up. So.
Okay, so I guess I'll follow up with the marketing manager. She had invited me and I haven't heard anything. And then also, she talked about a booth. Are we not looking at having a booth?
That's the part that we're not sure about. We do have a very small booth and we have a very large booth. And so we haven't actually spoken to them about booth sizes and what they pay, how much we have to pay for it, things like that. So, but we first wanted to go to the meetings that they have, like these social events where you get to just kind of meet with everybody. And those are the first meetings we're going to go to and hand out a lot of cards and let them know that we have some vacancies of turnkey restaurants and they're ready to roll. You can
and I can't remember. I mean, she did have a distinction on, you know, unique restaurants, mom and pop versus the standard. And so I don't know if it is going to be a good use of your time. I mean, you guys will decide that, but was there some discussion that some of them are your regular Chick-fil-A's and on the borders and that type of thing? So I don't know.
Yeah, we know all those guys. We meet with them. And so, but we're hoping it's more the local folks because those are the ones that we really think we can attract. We were already talking to all the nationals. So, but that's really the connection with the locals, I think is going to be a big deal. So we're pretty excited about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, they're definitely on the list. And then we have the Colorado Retail Council that we've reached out to. So we want to engage more with them. So yeah, we have a whole list of industry partners that we are actively engaging with.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation and the effort from your team and the vision from Bergan, Councilmember Bergan. My first question is, what are the national big retailers that you said you are prioritizing?
Well, I think there's 100 on the invite list. It would, it's going to be a variety. So oftentimes at ICSC, we'll meet with developers and brokers, and they represent a multitude of what I call end users or tenants. So I know one that we've been hearing a lot about is Aldi, and I just want to assure this committee that our team is actively engaging with their broker community. We've shared potential sites throughout Aurora. So, we will be meeting with them at ICSC. When I say them, I mean the brokerage team. So that's an example. Bob, Tom, you've got the list. I don't know if you want to highlight one or two that you think might be of interest.
Yeah, because you just said you were researching into their background. So just curious what those top retailers that you're researching are.
Bob, Tom, want to share?
Can I add something real quick?
Sure thing.
Just for Councilmember Jackson and Councilmember Wiles, I always, and Bob, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times people think ICSC that we're like meeting with, the individual retailers like the Nordstrom Rack or a certain store, certain restaurant. And you just said it, Cindy, that it's really the brokers. So I know some people thought, oh, we're going to meet with all these stores, and they're not there. So other than the fast food places, I think like Subway's there, but just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, that makes sense, but I'm assuming the brokers are representing certain companies and.
Correct.
Yes.
The companies are there, actually. They just send their brokers to the meetings. The companies kind of, corral them at the end of the day. And what did you find out? And what sites
They're
did you
at the
found? And stuff.
pool.
Yeah. But a lot of times, to get Nordstrom's to show up for a meeting is pretty tough. And so they'll send their brokers for the Nordstrom tracks and things like that. You were asking about research?
Well, your targeted list, like what are your top two, maybe?
Okay. So we have, and Tom can talk about this in a little more detail. We have a list called the Brown Book, which is every retailer in the country doing business that has more than like 3 stores, something like that. It's not every single mom and pop, but we basically went through the Brown Book. We looked at all of the folks that we are trying to attract here. We did a blast email to all of them. We're getting our responses now. The blast email was setting up for, we're about to call you and ask you for when you want to meet with us at ICSC. We did get a couple of responses back. Funny that the Aldi one, she came back and said, I'm right down the block from you guys. Like, why don't we meet before ICSC? So we're going to do that. But Tom has compiled a list of pretty much everyone from the Brown Book we want to go after. And then Tom can give a little more background on kind of how he's addressing the ones he's going after.
Tom Oldenburg, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. So our target, first we're looking for junior anchors that draw a crowd. That'll help the back of a lot of secondary centers that generate retail, junior anchors that generate retail, sales tax.
Can you talk a little bit about, sorry to interrupt, what a junior anchor, like an example of a junior anchor?
Junior anchor might be a Ross or a Ace Hardware, a smaller store, not the big anchor, but it draws a crowd, and hopefully on a weekly basis, that'll help bring to life some of these secondary centers, raise their rents, allow a landlord to fix up the centers, to have enough capital to fix up the centers, and help. That gives us an opportunity if we're drawing a junior anchor that's a retail sales tax, that offers a potential incentive opportunity to help bring it along. But as far as the restaurants, we're gathering a list of all the popular restaurants in the Front Range that aren't in Aurora right now. So they already have a basis. They already have their businesses allocated. They know the market. We're not trying to necessarily bring somebody from Austin, Texas that doesn't have any presence here. Well, we just focus. There's a lot of restaurants in the Front Range that we're looking at, the popular ones, and that'll also help bring the crowd. And at the same time, we're analyzing existing properties that have enough parking and the right size buildings for different tenants. And so that's our major focus is secondary centers, pad sites that are old and run down, and help make some magic out of it.
And also new development. So, there's a lot of new residential construction happening, and I know those residents and the businesses around there that, have to report in, they really want retail. It's an amenity, right? So
right. Yeah, yes, we're constantly looking for opportunities in Ward 2.
Yeah.
I appreciate that as someone who lives in a food desert. We talk about that sometimes, like in the neighborhood groups, and say, oh, we would love to go out to dinner, like a group of neighbors or whatever. And it's like, but where would we go?
Yeah.
So
it's a chicken and
that
egg.
work.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg.
Totally.
Sorry, follow up.
Sorry to make food food comments, about
Yeah,
restaurants.
real quick follow-up. Help me just understand. I hear getting those anchor businesses in that are already thriving, popular, big box, resourced throughout the metropolitan area. Um, what percentage are you looking at those versus those smaller mom and pops and maybe the more unique vendors? And I know it sounds like it's an ecosystem. Each one needs each other. The anchor is very important to draw the attention. So I hear that. But just in your research, what have you gathered for percentage wise, mom and pop versus big box? What are you looking at?
So I don't know what the percentage is. Um, it's kind of the marketplace kind of decides. I mean, we have the pop when we look into the restaurants, we're looking at the popular mom and pops or a chain that's not in Aurora right now. But as far as the junior anchors help keep the mom and pops going. If you have if you have something that's drawing the traffic, the mom and pops survive because of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
And it is a mix, and it really depends on where in the city, Ward 6 is different than Ward 1, so you're going to get a lot of that really kind of Aurora character, and Ward 1, Ward 6 might have more chain, but we still want to mix that with, kind of those uses that have character or, that Colorado connection, like a restaurant that's Colorado themed or something. So all of the above. And, our team will get together and talk and like, hey, did you eat at that restaurant in Denver? And let's go check it out. So we hear people saying, hey, what about this restaurant? Or, so any feedback like that, we're actively exploring. And usually we'll try to connect with their broker, but a small business, that's going to be a one-on-one connection. Bob, you had a comment?
Well, I was gonna mention that 80% of our tax revenue comes from national tenants, 20% comes from mom and pops. We are very excited about mom and pops, but they take a lot of work to get them to occupy a space that's not a restaurant, and because it's very expensive to convert. So generally speaking, when we run into a mom and pop, we're trying to find them a turnkey restaurant or a restaurant that's already has the infrastructure in it. A lot of that came from our restaurant program. We were putting infrastructure in. But there are a number of restaurants that have left, like an Old Chicago or some of the ones down in Southlands, and they are basically turnkey. So a mom and pop would be in a much better financial situation if they didn't have to buy $1 million worth of kitchen equipment, spend $500,000 fitting out the space, all the FF&E. They can just walk in, not literally just walk in, but they may have to pay a little something for the FF&E because the landlord might have gotten stuck with a tenant who left in the middle of the night. They got all the equipment, but that's the perfect setup for local restaurant operators. Nationals don't want the equipment; they want it gutted and start all over again. So those are the best opportunities for the locals, and that's what we're going to be presenting at Colorado Restaurant Association. Is that we have these turnkey restaurants for you folks. It's so much easier to open a restaurant when we have an existing restaurant right there. So that's sort of the pitch.
Thank you. Councilmember Bergan.
Thank you. I had to move out of my main part of my house because I'm having construction done in here, and it's very loud. And I might have missed if Bob said this. What we hear from a lot of the the shopping center owners and so forth is that a lot of the mom and pop shops can't necessarily afford the rents that are in certain shopping centers. So that's a big factor as well. So, we like in Ward 6, my residents are like, can we get something unique? We're tired of the chain restaurants. And a lot of times it just doesn't pencil out. And I think the risk factor on credit, right? Bob, you can talk about that. That's a big factor.
Yeah, let me talk about that for a second. Most of our national developers can't take a mom and pop. Their financing won't allow it. And so Southlands, about a year and a half ago, there was a lot of pressure to get restaurants open. They did a deal with someone who had 4 restaurants in the Denver market. So that was kind of like a good player locally. And they bolted in the middle of the night and left them with holding the bag on a whole bunch of rent. And so they came back and said, look, that's why we don't do deals with mom and pops. They don't have the credit. They may have the experience, but the people who finance our shopping centers want credit tenants. Now, we do have a couple of hundred secondary centers that are not in that situation. But if you take the top 10 primary centers, they're going to be in that financing bind when it comes to dealing with someone who isn't significant, has a $10 million plus signature.
And that's why diverse inventory is important, so we can help to start and grow those small mom and pops, and then ultimately they'll have the revenue and the customer base where they can move into other types of centers. I know Councilmember Hancock has her hand up. I don't know if anybody saw that.
Yeah, I was
do.
going in order of who had their hands up, which is why Councilmember Bergan went first, but
No
Councilmember
worries.
Hancock,
I saw I was number 2.
you were
I
number
do.
2.
I am I'm thinking because Ward 4 we have an eclectic mix of restaurants in our area, but I'm more interested in more themed multi-use food / experience type of venues. What is your thoughts, Bob, on that in terms of having something that's not only eatery but also an experience, because people like to be able to do those two things too. They're not necessarily interested in traveling around the world. They want to be able to go to one place, like on Havana, we've got a karaoke / sushi / ice cream / I mean, you can go and go nuts for like hours, right? And so are we looking at more opportunities like that? And also I wanted to make a pitch for Postino. That is such a good charcuterie place to go eat at. But I mean, something, if we're looking at chains, this would be one of those kind of things that young people seem to gravitate towards, that's close to other activities, excuse me, that they can take advantage of too.
Yeah, experiential retail is very hot right now. And there are some experiential retailers at ICSC, the dog park / bar is hot. Pickleball is also hot. Bob, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to say that we do believe that mom and pop restaurants actually create activity in centers that are lacking a junior anchor or an anchor tenant. And we believe that as the junior anchors and anchors kind of fade away, a lot of big box players are closing, and we're going to be backfilling a lot of those spaces. And those spaces, could be pretty large. So we believe that mom and pop restaurants can actually fill in some of those spaces that are divided up. And those could be the experiential anchor tenants or sub-anchor tenants for these shopping centers. Because we do believe that that started with the last generation, and the next generation also believes in experiences versus assets. And so, we think that the mom and pop restaurants can create a more unique local experience, as opposed to a Chili's that, it's the same experience in every place in the country. Chili's might do 5-6 million a year, and the mom and pop might do 2 million a year, but they're both important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other questions? I know there's lots of great ideas out there. I know I got recently was sent something for a place called the Geyser Commons, which is a collection of small cottages that were designed for local small businesses to get their foot in the door. They get a smaller space, and then they eventually move into, hopefully, ideally, a larger space down the road. And so maybe that's something that some of our development partners might want to look at, when they're looking at little retail centers to build or something like that. Or maybe it's repurposing existing land. But I think there's lots of interesting ideas out there that maybe we can replicate and steal to try and meet the needs that we have in the city. So I appreciate everybody's work on that. Thank you. It looks like we don't have any other miscellaneous matters. Our next meeting is March 25th at 2 p.m. So if there's nothing else, I think we can adjourn the meeting and everybody can go to their next meeting.
And Councilmember Wiles, we just wanted,
Yes.
with Councilmember Jackson being on the call, just wanted to confirm that the fourth Wednesday at 2 was indeed the new series going forward that you all would like to finalize. That works.
That works for me.
Yes, please finalize that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
We will
Yeah.
get those invites for the series out.
Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, bye.